Welcome to On the Money Line, a podcast by MMA Play 365. I'm Newsom and I'm here for UFC 269, the final pay-per-view of the year in the UFC. We've got two title fights at the top of the card in the UFC lightweight division and the UFC bantamweight division 2. And we start in the main event, which is the UFC lightweight championship between Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira and Dustin the Diamond Poirier. And I think this is a really good fight at the top of the card. Definitely the two best fighters in the lightweight division at the minute. I think Charles Oliveira has definitely got advantages in this fight, but I think those advantages are really on. So even though Charles Oliveira's got the most submission victories in the UFC, and that's obviously his record, I do think his Muay Thai is sharp, it's getting better, and especially in those early moments in the fights, he's going to be on point, he's going to be firing out straight punches, he's going to be firing out kicks to the legs, to the body, to the head, and he's really good in those early moments in fights, and that's normally where he can catch his opponents as well. And his wrestling's improving. This is something else again we saw in the Tony Ferguson fight. Tony Ferguson's a good defensive wrestler, but Charles Oliveira was taking him down at will, getting on top and really working him. That's actually my concern for Dustin Poirier early in this fight. If Charles Oliveira can take Poirier down, even if it's only for just a single moment, if Poirier is looking to stand straight back up, if he gives his back, turns his back whilst he's trying to stand back up and Charles Oliveira dives with the hooks in, takes his back, you know, that's the dangers for Poirier. But I think if Poirier can survive the early moments in this fight, and I don't think it's going to be a massive storm that Poirier's got to weather, I just think Poirier's got to be smart early in this fight. But the one aspect of Poirier's game that I think is absolutely key here is the fact that he's got good cardio, he'll still be strong in rounds 4 and 5, and the accuracy of his boxing is just unbelievable. And it's that I think is going to be the real difference in this fight. I think when Charles Oliveira is really trying to figure out what the best approach is for this fight, whether he tries to stand and strike with Poirier or whether he's wanting to take the fight down to the mat, Poirier is just going to be peppering away at him, landing volume, not putting too much power behind the shots, but just taking rounds from Oliveira the longer the fight goes on. And that accuracy in the boxing, the fact that he's got volume and cardio as well, I think that's going to be the real killer for Oliveira. I think Oliveira is much more suited to fighting somebody like a Michael Chandler that'll come out fast and hard and sort of blow his load in that first round, and then Oliveira can come back late, a little bit later in the fight, obviously round 2 in that Chandler fight. But in this fight with Poirier, I don't think Oliveira is going to be able to wear Poirier down. I think it's going to be the other way around. And the path to victory for Charles Oliveira for me is to take Poirier down, but Poirier is not easy to take down. He's got decent defensive wrestling. And if he does take Poirier down, I think Poirier is going to be, for as good as Charles Oliveira is on the mat with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think Poirier is going to be okay if he's taken down in regards to being able to get back up to his feet. And like I say, I think Poirier is just going to start putting the boxing combinations together, adding in low kicks, and just being accurate with the strikes. And that's going to really throw Charles Oliveira off his game. Charles Oliveira at that point will start struggling to strike back with Poirier. I think he'll struggle to counter Poirier. And if Poirier is landing that volume with accuracy, it's going to push Oliveira backwards, and that way it's going to stop Oliveira taking him down successfully as well. I think Dustin Poirier is going to have some moments early when we're thinking, okay, this is Charles Oliveira's chance to retain his title, but I do think Poirier is going to pull away from this fight the longer it goes on. I do think it goes deep into the fight as well, potentially to a decision. That's where I think the advantages lie with Dustin Poirier. I'm picking Dustin Poirier to become the new UFC lightweight champion. And for me, I think this is a really difficult fight for Julianna Pena. The problem we've got is, because Amanda Nunes is so dominant, she's so technically skilled in every aspect of MMA, the same things happened when Anderson Silva was a dominant champion, when George St. Pierre was a dominant champion. When these new contenders come in, people talk about, oh, it's a different test, and you know, this one could be the time where Amanda Nunes is tested. At some point, Amanda Nunes is going to lose this title. You know, it's inevitable. And it's going to be in a fight where she's a minus 800, 900, minus 1,000 favourite. But I just don't think it's this fight. Julianna Pena, her striking definitely is nowhere near the striking of Amanda Nunes in regards to volume, power, technique, combinations, punching, kicking. Amanda Nunes puts everything together so well. She's a really dangerous striker. She's got power. She's got accumulation of volume, so she can finish from that respect as well. Julianna Pena is going to get absolutely lit up on the feet. Pena, where she's good is the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, but again, I just don't think she's better than Amanda Nunes in those areas. She might be able to take Nunes down, maybe, but if she does take Nunes down, Nunes is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt herself. She's going to be able to find her way back up to her feet. I do not see a scenario where Pena just takes Nunes down, controls her. Nunes is struggling to get back up to her feet, but Pena's running submission attempts and just running down the clock with that top control time. I just do not see that happening at all. I think it's a really difficult fight for Pena, a fight where her opponent, Amanda Nunes, just like Nunes is against pretty much every single opponent she faces. I think she's the better striker, she's the better wrestler, she's the better grappler, she's more dangerous, she's got the finishing upside. Her cardio will allow her to win over 5 rounds as well. I just don't see Amanda Nunes losing this fight and losing a belt, so I'm picking Amanda Nunes to remain the UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. And in the next fight, a fun fight, if it happens, we've got Geoff Neal versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. And I say if it happens loosely because a couple of books have removed the betting lines for this fight, but I do believe at the moment that I'm recording that fight is still on. And basically the situation and the big red flag, the big talking point is around Geoff Neal, who reportedly on Thanksgiving was arrested for DWI and also in the possession of an unregistered firearm. I believe that was the story that was ran. So that was a couple of weeks ago. Obviously his fight's this week. We were told that even though he was arrested that the fight's still on, but something doesn't sit right with me in regards to the bookies removing the lines. I don't know if they know something or it's precautionary or whatever, but in regards to this fight and how it plays out, that's the biggest red flag for me. The fact that Geoff Neal was drinking during fight camp, which I'm not saying a fighter can't drink, but it's very unusual for fighters to drink and get drunk and stuff like that whilst, you know, they've got a big fight just a couple of weeks away. I do think that that's going to play a factor in this fight, or it could play a small factor. Regardless, though, it doesn't change my pick. My initial pick was Santiago Ponzinibbio to win this fight. I think Geoff Neal, he had a great start in the UFC. I was singing his praises. I thought he was a future top 5 fighter, but in his last 2 fights against Neil Magny and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, 2 fights that he lost against 2 different types of fighters, it just sort of put a bit of a pause on where Geoff Neal's ceiling actually is for me. And against Ponzinibbio, he started rough against Miguel Baeza in his last fight, but the fact that he was able to eat all that damage, especially on his legs, come back later in the fight and just absolutely start blowing Baeza out of the water and just showing that he's the veteran and he's the fighter at the top of the division, it was really impressive. I think for Geoff Neal to really get at his opponents, he's got to be able to get them on the back foot. He's got to be able to get them a little bit concerned, a little bit hesitant, and he's got to be able to hurt them frequently. He couldn't do that against Neil Magny, he couldn't do that against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and for me, I think that's the reason why he lost both of those fights, and Ponzinibbio is no different. Ponzinibbio, I do think is hittable, so I do think Geoff Neal is going to be able to land shots on Ponzinibbio, but Ponzinibbio is tough, he's hard, he's got heart, he's got cardio, and I just feel that Geoff Neal is going to hit Ponzinibbio and realise that he's not going anywhere. Ponzinibbio, once he realises that he's not going anywhere, I think that he's going to be able to push forwards in this fight and just land a ton of volume on Geoff Neal. And then if we're going back to the fact that Geoff Neal might not be right there in the cage 100% from a mental perspective, then that's a bit of an issue. I just think Santiago Ponzinibbio, stylistically, I don't think it's one where it's absolutely in the favour of Ponzinibbio. I think it's a good fight, but I think when we're looking at the type of fighter that is going to be able to beat Geoff Neal, you look at what Ponzinibbio did to Neil Magny, and I know that MMA math doesn't always work out, but Ponzinibbio ran through the style of Magny, yet the style of Magny was able to beat Geoff Neal. So because Ponzinibbio and Geoff Neal are very similar in styles, I do think that fight was true in regards to showing who the better mixed martial artist is, and I think that's Santiago Ponzinibbio. I'm picking Santiago Ponzinibbio to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Kai Kara France versus Cody Garbrandt. Interesting, because of Cody Garbrandt, this is his first fight cutting down to flyweight, 125 pounds. If you've seen the pictures online, he looks really, really skinny, really drained. So I'm not too sure how he's going to look. I do think he's going to be much faster than what he was at bantamweight, which is going to be phenomenal because obviously Cody Garbrandt was really fast at bantamweight. I think he's going to be even faster at flyweight. Does his power carry down to flyweight? I'm not too sure. That's one of a bit of the unknowns in regards to powerful fighters moving down in weight. Obviously, Cody Garbrandt's got power in his hands in general. Does it transfer down to flyweight? I'm not too sure. The one area that I'm really concerned with Cody Garbrandt here, though, is his durability. He did have durability issues up at bantamweight. He's been knocked out numerous times, badly as well. So obviously that doesn't bode well for him the longer his career goes on. But the one thing that is a major concern is when you cut down weight, when you cut more weight than what you used to, that does make your durability a big question mark for a lot of fighters. When they've cut down in weight, the durability is more of a problem, and you actually only see that on the reverse. When the fighter moves up in weight, you see that the durability improves. So moving down in weight, I just don't trust the durability of Cody Garbrandt, and seeing how he looks at flyweight, he does look like he's cut a lot of weight. I could be wrong, and obviously this is preconceptions. You know, we haven't seen him in flyweight yet, so that's got to be something you take into consideration. For me, there's just a lot of red flags on Cody Garbrandt to pick him to win this fight. I think Kai Kara-France is more experienced. He's got more fights under his belt. Is it a good team in regards to city kickboxing under Eugene Behrman? Kai Kara-France is technical on the feet. He's a quick flyweight, in and out of range, mixes things up well between his punches and his kicks. He's a little bit, I wouldn't say chinny, but the durability issues are a little bit on his side as well. So, you know, it's not all on Cody Garbrandt here. I do think that there's a high chance that one of these fighters gets knocked out, but I am going to be picking the natural flyweight, the flyweight that I believe isn't cutting as much weight, that's probably more durable, and also the flyweight that's more experienced and likely the better all-round technical striker. I do think that it's just hard to pick Cody Garbrandt in this spot, in my opinion. I know he's a favourite, but I'm siding with the underdog. I'm picking Kai Kara-France to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got the Sugar Show. We've got Sean O'Malley versus Raulian Paiva. Raulian Paiva last time out looked phenomenal considering what he was up against. I thought that Kyler Phillips was going to absolutely completely run through Raulian Paiva, and I do believe that fight should have been a draw, but the fact that Raulian Paiva didn't get ran through against Kyler Phillips tells me that he's still got a lot of qualities about him, but I think he's going to struggle here against Sean O'Malley. I think with this level of competition, you know, that's no disrespect to Raulian Paiva, but I think Sean O'Malley's biggest test, his biggest problems is when he moves into the top 10 of the division, the top 5 of the division. That's when I really think that Sean O'Malley's going to get tested in a big way. But outside of those highly ranked fighters, I think Sean O'Malley he's too fast. His movement in and out of range, how he mixes everything up, he fights in a really awkward and orthodox way. And I think that Raulian Paiva's just going to have a lot of problems in this fight. I don't think O'Malley's going to be there to be hit. One attack that O'Malley does struggle with is the low kick, but Raulian Paiva is not the type of fighter to really sit down on that low kick for 3 rounds. So what I think is going to happen is both fighters are going to be in a striking war. I think it's going to be won and lost on the feet, and I just think that O'Malley is going to be able to do more than Raulian Paiva for as long as this fight goes on. I think the finishing upside is with Sean O'Malley as well. He carries power in accumulation of volume. I'm not saying Raulian Paiva can't finish him, but I do feel that O'Malley has the finishing upside. I think he's more likely to win a decision should it go to the scorecards based on the volume and the movement. I think Raulian Paiva is just going to be looking for a moving target constantly throughout the fight, and that's going to allow O'Malley to pull away with the fight, either get a finish, if not, win the fight on the scorecards. I'm picking Sean O'Malley to win this fight. And in the next fight, this is probably my favourite fight on the entire card, actually. We've got Josh Emmett versus Dan Ige. Now, I love Dan Ige. I think his rise was definitely unexpected, and I think it's unexpected because he doesn't shine specifically in one particular area. You don't notice those elite qualities in one particular discipline. And Dan Ige, a lot of fans didn't really think too much of him when he came to the UFC. But like I said, he made a rise up to the top, and I'm happy that we've got to see him where he is right now. And I think this is a big test for him against Josh Emmett. And it's a fight where I think the UFC want to know where Dan Ige's at as well, because Dan Ige is going to be beating fighters like Gavin Tucker, but he went up against the Korean Zombie. A big step up in competition. I thought it was not a step up too much for Dan Ige, but Dan Ige over 5 rounds, he did get completely dominated by Korean Zombie when all was said and done. But now he's sort of having a fight against a fighter of a similar stature as the Korean Zombie in Josh Emmett. I really like Josh Emmett. He's the hardest hitter in the division for a start. low-key, I actually think he ruined Shane Burgos a little bit as well, because Burgos had this legendary durability until he fought Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett hit him with so many hard shots, dropped him as well late in the fight, had him wobbled. And after that Josh Emmett fight, Shane Burgos was knocked out weirdly against Barboza, against Billy Quarantillo. He had some moments where he was getting hurt a little bit and a little bit rocked. So I just don't think that Shane Burgos has looked the same since he fought Josh Emmett. So for me, I do feel that Emmett is the hardest hitter in the division, packs together combinations, good boxing combinations. He'll mix in kicks as well. But Emmett's really big and really strong for the division. He's durable as well. So when I'm looking at how Dan Ige can win this fight, if Dan Ige goes toe-to-toe with him with the boxing, I think that Emmett's just going to end up cracking him hard, so hard that it's going to cause Dan Ige to have too much respect for Emmett. That'll cause him cause hesitancy when Ige's trying to engage. It'll push Ige back a little bit. It'll allow Emmett to come forwards. So I think on the feet, Emmett has his number with the power, with the combinations. So then Dan Ige goes to his wrestling, tries to take him down. I don't think that's going to be easy. Emmett's got a wrestling background. Like I said, he's big, he's strong, he's physical. I don't think Ige's going to be able to take him down very easily. And if he does, I think Emmett will be okay on the mat. I think he'll be able to get back up to his feet without Ige slicing through him in regards to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't think that'll be the case. So now I'm just really struggling where Dan Ige wins this fight, to the point where I think Emmett's got enough advantages in this fight from a skill perspective and a physical perspective as well to be okay here. So for those reasons, I'm picking Josh Emmett to win this fight. And in the next fight, in the bantamweight division, another fun fight. We've got Pedro Munhoz versus Dominick Cruz. Dominick Cruz fighting again very quickly, considering that he's had difficulties getting fights back to back this close in his career. And I think it's a pick 'em for a reason. The bookies are seeing this fight being close. I think the fight is going to be relatively close as well. But I am siding with Pedro Munhoz here. I think Pedro Munhoz's low kicks, and we talk about this all the time with Munhoz. Yes, they didn't work against Jose Aldo, but I think when you look at Dominick Cruz against Casey Kenny, when you look at Dominick Cruz against Henry Cejudo, even though Cruz has this weird unorthodox movement that he's designed and developed himself, he leads so heavily on that lead leg, and I think that lead leg's going to get chewed up against Pedro Munhoz. I think Pedro Munhoz is going to get hit quite a bit as well, because of the movement with Cruz, he strikes at some weird angles, he's got weird timing, but I don't think that he's going to be able to discourage Pedro Munhoz coming forwards. And if Munhoz just constantly breaks that leg down, I think the leg is going to be hurt of Dominick Cruz at some point in this fight. It's going to allow Munhoz to really push forward, because it'll slow the movement down. It'll cut off the angles that Dominick Cruz is trying to take as well on the feet. And if Dominick Cruz tries to shoot on Pedro Munhoz has got that guillotine, that trademark guillotine that is just nasty. When he hasn't caught it in quite a while, and that's purely because he's fighting much higher level of competition. But if Cruz shoots a takedown, then Munhoz has obviously got the ability to wrap up that guillotine. And if he doesn't get the guillotine, then his jiu-jitsu is good enough to stand back up. I don't think that this fight is going to have long periods of moments on the mat grappling. I do think it's won and lost on the feet. I think Pedro Munhoz chews up the leg of Dominick Cruz and eventually just slows Dominick Cruz down to a point where Munhoz can start really implementing his own game plan, push forward and pulling away with the fight. I'm picking Pedro Munhoz to win this fight. And in the next fight, in the heavyweight division, we've got Augusto Sakai versus Tai Tuivasa. And Tai Tuivasa here, I think, has got a good fight ahead of him, and that's predominantly because he hasn't got an opponent that's going to want to take him down, and that's Tai Tuivasa's big problem. It's when he fights a fighter that wants to wrestle him, that wants to grapple with him, doesn't want to stand with him. But the thing is with Augusto Sakai, he's naturally predominantly a striker himself, Muay Thai style. I do think that Tai Tuivasa's got to be careful in this fight that he doesn't get hit with hard elbows and he's not getting hit too much just in general. Sakai, I do think, is still a decent fighter, even though he lost last time out against Rosenstruik. A poor performance in my opinion, but Augusto Sakai is still going to present problems to Tuivasa. But what I like from Tuivasa is he commits to this low kick in every single fight, on every single opportunity, and the low kicks are nasty He's a fighter like Pedro Munhoz that you can just trust to throw these hard leg kicks. As long as he's not facing somebody that's trying to take him down, Tai Tuivasa will batter the lead leg of his opponent. I think he's going to do exactly that to Sakai. He's going to slow Sakai down. And then from there, Tuivasa can get inside where he can get his street fighting style going, throw hooks to the body, throw hooks to the head, throw elbows in close as well, push Augusto Sakai backwards. But it all falls on that low kick from Tai Tuivasa. If he gets off on that nice and early, I think that this fight won't look like the pick and won't look like the -110 on either side that the bookies are stating. If he doesn't, then yes, I could see it being a close fight, but I'd still like Tai Tuivasa to maybe take the first 2 rounds. I think the cardio of Tuivasa, I think Augusto Sakai will be able to pull away from this fight if it goes late and if that lead leg isn't hurting. But like I say, I trust Tai Tuivasa to throw the low kick, get Augusto Sakai hurt early on that calf. It'll stop the movement, it'll stop the power, it'll allow Tai Tuivasa to push forward, start landing combinations, potentially find that knockout as well, which is definitely possible. I'm picking Tai Tuivasa to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Bruno Silva versus Jordan Wright. Bruno Silva a big favourite in this fight, and I think he's a big favourite for a reason. I just think Jordan Wright's going to have problems in this fight stylistically. Bruno Silva's dangerous on his feet, he's got cardio, and ultimately I just think Bruno Silva over his career, even outside of the UFC, has beaten better fighters like Jordan Wright. He's more experienced. I think Bruno Silva has got that knockout power on the feet. I think he's going to be able to move Jordan Wright backwards, and Jordan Wright has problems in fights where he can't buzzsaw through his opponent. If he can't get that round 1 knockout, if he's not that much of a better fighter than his opponent, then he's going to have difficulties. I think Bruno Silva's the better fighter here. In regards to the wrestling and grappling, I think that's an option for Bruno Silva as well. He doesn't always look to go to the wrestling and grappling, but he's got dangerous ground and pound. He can take his opponents down. We've seen him take Russians down outside of the UFC as well. So I think Bruno Silva here is the more dangerous fighter on the feet. I think he could revert to wrestling should it not go his way on the feet, which I don't imagine. And if he does revert to his wrestling, I think he can get some top control time as well, land some nice ground and pound. And like I say, this isn't an opponent Jordan Wright is going to run through in round 1. I mean, it's always possible. You can never rule out a knockout with the 4-ounce gloves, but I don't think Jordan Wright's going to run through Bruno Silva. Therefore, history tells me Jordan Wright's going to have issues. I think Bruno Silva has got the right style to cause those issues. I'm picking Bruno Silva to win this fight. And in the next fight, a really interesting fight stylistically, we've got Andre Muniz versus Eryk Anders. And like I say, a clash of styles. Muniz, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is off the scales. This is a man that broke the arm of 4th degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt Jacare Souza. A nasty, nasty break of the arm. And Muniz has been on an absolute tear lately. He's looking like a fighter that knows where he needs to take his opponents to win the fight and is able to execute that game plan as well. Eryk Anders on the flip side, I think Eryk Anders is going to be more physical in this fight, and there is going to be problems for Muniz that comes with that. Eryk Anders for me is the better striker, but I don't think there's a huge edge. And Andre Muniz's striking's developing. I think Muniz will be able to stand with him to a degree, but like I say, Eryk Anders is more physical, more power comes with that, so Muniz has got to be careful that Anders doesn't land a bomb that knocks him out. But Eryk Anders' volume isn't that great. Muniz honestly really doesn't get hit that much either in general, so that reduces the likelihood of that knockout from Anders happening. But where I can see Anders having success here is clinching up with Muniz and stalling inside the clinch. As we've seen over the last couple of months, and especially in last weekend's card as well, Alonzo Menafield pinned William Knight up against the cage and just wore on him and stalled the fight a little bit. But because William Knight landed a couple of hard shots, once he was able to get some separation, the judges just don't like fighters stalling. They don't like those dirty, ugly clinch fights where they're just running the clock down. So if Eryk Anders is doing that, he better hope that Muniz doesn't break at some point, land a couple of hard shots, or he better hope that Muniz just doesn't take him down, because the second that something else happens outside of that stalling, the judges will completely dismiss that control time from Eryk Anders. And stylistically, I do think this fight's a problem for Anders. I think Anders is definitely, you can definitely take him down. He does tend to fight a lot of strikers, so you won't see him getting taken down too much. But against somebody like Muniz, who is going to want this fight down to the mat, I think he's going to be able to get him down, and I think he's going to be able to slice through him like a hot knife through butter. I think Muniz is so underrated in regards to his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm one person that has underrated it in the past, not anymore. I think Andre Muniz is going to be able to get the takedowns he needs. I think he potentially going to get the submission as well. And if he doesn't, he's going to have a ton of control time on top. I think Eryk will get stuck on the bottom. I'm picking Muniz to win this fight. So in the next fight, we've got a fight between two prospects in the women's flyweight division between Erin Blanchfield and Miranda Maverick. A really interesting fight stylistically because both fighters are decent strikers, both fighters are good wrestlers, both fighters are good grapplers. So breaking this fight down was quite a lot of fun. In regards to the striking, I think Miranda Maverick is the better striker. Erin Blanchfield, more of a wrestler and a grappler that's starting to develop the strike, and I think we'll see those developments the longer she stays in the UFC. Fight by fight, I think she'll develop nicely. But right now, I think Miranda Maverick is the better striker. Miranda Maverick likely going to be the more physical fighter inside the cage as well. Looks like she has more of a weight cut, and we could see that physicality really working for Miranda Maverick in moments in this fight, but I don't think it's going to be enough to just solely win this fight for Miranda Maverick. I think Erin Blanchfield is got some legitimate skills, especially in the world of jiu-jitsu. Her only loss has come to Tracy Cortez, and that was a split decision. There was moments back and forward, moments on the mat where Erin Blanchfield was looking great, and I think that is testament to how good Blanchfield is on the mat. Now, Miranda Maverick likes to score takedowns herself. Her wrestling, again, is good, but I think that Miranda Maverick's best path to victory is on the feet here, and I think that's where we'll see her having the most success. And because of that, I think Blanchfield's going to go to the wrestling often. I think she's got different ways of taking her opponents down, whether that be a single leg, a double leg, or looking for a trip. Just a variety of ways to get the fight where she's strongest. And she does normally look to get the fight to the mat. I'd be really surprised if she tries to get into this fight and enters a stand-up war with Maverick, when I do believe she's got an advantage on the mat. I think Miranda Maverick can be taken down. We have seen her taken down in previous fights. I think she can get a little bit stuck on her back at times as well. And I think these are the moments where Blanchfield is really going to thrive in this fight. And I'm actually going to side with the underdog in Erin Blanchfield in this fight, because I think that there's going to be enough moments on the mat with Blanchfield scoring takedowns and taking Maverick down that it's going to play a factor should the fight hit the scorecards. And if there's a finish and the majority of the fight plays out on the mat with Blanchfield on top, then she's got the finishing upside in those scenarios as well. So I do think that Blanchfield gets the takedown she needs. If she continuously gets takedowns throughout the fight, if Maverick gets back up to her feet and gets taken down again, then that's going to cause hesitancy from Miranda Maverick striking. I also think it's going to really hurt Miranda Maverick in regards to knowing that she can be taken down. I think Blanchfield will be able to pull away with the fight the longer the fight goes on. I think Blanchfield's got to be careful that she doesn't enter a 15-minute kickboxing war. History, previous fights, the tape tells you that Blanchfield will get this fight to the mat, or will at least want this fight to the mat. That should be enough to really get a win, whether it be a finisher on the scorecards. I'm picking Erin Blanchfield to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Alex Perez versus Matt Schnell, a fight that I feel like it's been booked 100 times. It's been moved so many times. I think it's supposed to have happened early summer, but for some reason we're in December and this fight's happening. I don't know why the UFC was so keen on matching this fight, if I'm being honest, because I don't think the fight's going to be close. I think that Alex Perez is just a level above Matt Schnell. I like Matt Schnell. I think he's a decent fighter. He's got good striking, decent wrestling. He's tricky in regards to the jiu-jitsu. But again, it's when you look at this fight and where is Matt Schnell better than Alex Perez? I don't think he's a better striker than Alex Perez. He might be quicker, but outside of being quicker, I think Alex Perez has got more variety in the weapons he uses with his feet, with his hands, the combinations. I think that he's got more power as well. So I do give the slight advantage in regards to speed to Matt Schnell. Outside of that, I think Alex Perez is definitely the better striker. Alex Perez is the better wrestler, and I think he's the better grappler as well. Even if he gets put on his back, I think he'll be able to find a way back up to his feet or sweep and reverse Schnell. And if he puts Schnell on Schnell's back, Schnell's got tricky arm bars and triangles. Like I say, he can be sneaky on the mat, but I don't think he's going to be able to catch Alex Perez, a fighter as good as Alex Perez, with an arm bar or a triangle off his back in guard. I just don't see that happening. I think Alex Perez is better wherever this fight goes. I'm picking Alex Perez to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Ryan Hall versus Darrick Minner. And we've seen this fight so many times. I just don't trust the style of Ryan Hall. I get that it can be effective, and I get that Minner's not the type of opponent that's a ranked opponent that's going to cause Ryan Hall so many problems, but I just don't trust the style of Ryan Hall. Minner, although he can be a little mistake prone, he's still a decent grappler himself, he's still a decent wrestler himself. So for Ryan Hall to, hit one of these Imanari rolls and leg lock Darrick Minner. I just don't see it happening. But the one thing that has improved with Minner over his last couple of fights is his striking under James Krause has got so much better, and that could be a really big factor in this fight, because whilst Ryan Hall's trying to stay at range and throw in high kicks, and then when he comes into range, Imanari rolling, I think Darrick Minner's going to be able to keep this fight vertical and just stay active, or at least more active than Ryan Hall. I think if we see a decision here, I don't think that we'll have seen Hall take Minner down, because if it goes to a decision, I just think that if Minner does get taken down, he's going to get finished. So if it goes to a decision, I think Minner will have landed more volume. I think the Imanari rolls is something I personally don't trust in mixed martial arts. I think Minner will be able to keep himself safe, not get sucked into that type of grappling approach that Ryan Hall comes with. And I think Minner will just be able to just do enough in this fight to, don't think the fight's going to be exciting, but just do enough to win the fight. Yes, there's a chance Ryan Hall catches Minner, but like I said, Minner's a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player himself, a lot of submissions. His striking's getting better under James Krause. I think that's going to be enough for him to win in this fight, and for that reason, I'm picking Darrick Minner to win this fight. In the next fight, we've got Randy Costa versus Tony Kelly. A really interesting fight, because I do feel that for as much I like Randy Costa, for as good as he is, as exciting as he is, I think if this fight gets extended and we go into late into the second round, into the third round, I think Tony Kelly's cardio, his pressure and his all-round game will be able to be enough to slow Randy Costa down and take over the fight late. But the thing is, Randy Costa's so dangerous in round one. We saw that against Adrian Yanez, who I still believe is going to be one of the best fighters in the division, an elite type of striker. And Randy Costa hung with him and was lighting him up in that first round, and subsequently Randy Costa did get caught in that second round as he was slowing down a little bit because of the work rate he puts out in round one. And that's the same in this fight. I think Randy Costa's going to come out fast, he's going to come out hard, he's going to try and knock Tony Kelly out, and if he doesn't, it's going to be a big concern, because I do think Kelly's gritty, ugly type of all-round style and his ability to push and go deep in fights and really drag his opponents into those deep waters, I think will be a nightmare for Randy Costa. But I do think Randy Costa finds that knockout early in round one. I think his striking in that first round is more than enough from a technical standpoint to be able to get at Tony Kelly early, land on him and take him out of there. Randy Costa's going to have problems in his UFC career, in my opinion, when he doesn't or can't get the better level of competition out of there in round one. But I think for now, he's got the ability to knock Tony Kelly out in round one. I think that's what happens. If he doesn't, he's likely going to take a loss, in my opinion. But I do think that first round knockout happens. I'm picking Randy Costa to win this fight. And in the final fight of the breakdown, we've got Priscilla Cachoeira versus Gillian Robertson. Gillian Robertson, a big favourite in this fight for a reason, in my opinion. Again, it's another fight where I just feel that she's likely going to be better everywhere. Maybe the striking's going to be quite close between the two fighters, but Robertson's wrestling offensively is better than the defensive wrestling of Cachoeira. And if and when Robertson takes this fight down to the mat, I think she's just going to roll absolutely all over Cachoeira, and I wouldn't expect Cachoeira to see the final bell should Gillian Robertson really get this wrestling going. And I think she will get the wrestling going. Like I say, the striking could be close. I don't think that Priscilla Cachoeira runs through a striking at all, but I do think the striking will be close enough for Gillian Robertson to think, you know, I'm going to try a takedown. Once she gets that first takedown and she starts really advancing positions and performing well on top side, I think that Gillian Robertson will just be very, very aware at that point that she's got such a big advantage top side in that grappling department, and therefore goes to it more consistently the longer the fight goes on. For that reason, I think Robertson makes this fight won and lost on the mat. That gives her the finishing upside. That also makes her more likely to win a decision. I'm picking Gillian Robertson to win this fight. And that's all for this podcast for UFC 269. I hope you all enjoyed the breakdowns. Please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the MMA Play 365 YouTube channel. If I've ever helped you win a bet with my predictions, with my analysis, I'd really appreciate that like and that subscription. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night. It's going to be a fire card, and I'll see you next week.